So eventually we can catch up with them. How long? I don't know. I might start graying by then, but we shall see. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
You already are. There's no need for that. Welcome back to part 2 of Yahoo Footballing Weekly podcast with me, Yahoo columnist Neil Humphreys.
Yahoo editor Chia and Keong here, and we got our second time in here, I guess. Raushan.
Yeah, I did well enough to get the call up for the second round, but I'm excited for this one.
He did. He's a Man U fan, but more importantly, in this context, regular local football commentator, contributor on radios and podcasts and all the rest of it. So it's great to have you back, man.
Good to be here. Excited always to talk about Singapore football.
And as always, you guys, man, the comments.
Yeah. Longer and longer.
Every week, right?
Every week gets longer and longer.
We're getting PhD level theses.
Part 1, part 2, part 3.
Careful, they might be columnists next after Neil Humphreys.
I'm okay with that. But even on Instagram, I get comments on Instagram. Nobody writes comments on Instagram unless it's about your cats or something, you know. But thank you so much. Do keep them coming in. This week, I'll let you go ahead with it, but this week might be one of my favourites yet.
Ooh. Yeah, because last few weeks, we've been talking about the pitch on our Tampines Hub.
Loads of comments.
How it's been cut up because it's been overused. So somehow that one generated a lot of talk, a lot of pitch side talk.
Basically getting to the point, who is it for? Yeah. Who does it serve?
Who runs it?
And what should its priorities be?
Correct. So Mr. Lingesh Kumar, thanks for writing it. He actually wrote a few paragraphs.
Okay.
Each one of our topics.
Oh wow!
I think Raushan is right. I think they're all auditioning for our jobs.
Exactly.
That's what they're doing.
They could do it. But okay, we just take our Tampines Hub comment. He said, "I feel that having this type of community-based hubs instead of standalone football stadiums will suit our Singapore environment. We can have our clubhouses for fans situated at these hubs, and fans can have other activities planned for at the hub with their family and friends." But event planning must improve along with usage of better maintenance methods for the pitches, which is crucial for everyone to make the most of these hubs. I hope that this recent markup provides for a learning opportunity for venue operators to plan for with a busy SPL season ongoing and look for ways to improve scheduling. We need this working as there's going to be more stadiums being developed into hubs, which I feel is best for everyone, but we need the logistics and planning scheduling challenges met with the right people working on this. We can make it happen. Wonderful. Love it.
Amen.
Love it. I'll let you go next, but I just love the pragmatism of the whole thing. Firstly, he's absolutely right. Even though we are a football podcast, I don't think any of us are naive to suggest that we can be in a position where our stadiums are exclusively for football,
100%.
unless they are privately funded. We need 6 or 7 Lion City Sailors. We hope they
who don't
come.
have their own stadium, by the way.
Who don't have their own stadium.
Yeah.
We hope they come in the near future, but until then, they are always going to be multi-purpose facilities.
Yeah.
They're taxpayer funded, so we can't expect otherwise. My point, which is Lingesh's point, a great point, is the communication is king here.
Yeah.
No one is saying that Tampines has to have the stadium 24/7, and no one is saying that community events must dominate 24/7. But there has to be communication, and there has to be clear scheduling. That if you are going to have private events, what kind of event? What impact is it likely to have on the pitch? Do a full pitch assessment before and after, and check beforehand that there was enough time for pitch recovery. None of those things were done. Had they been put in place, simple communication with all the right stakeholders, Tampines, Geylang might not have had these problems.
I think you're expecting too much in terms of communication.
How dare I?
Exactly.
How dare
I think you need to manage the expectations here. Do you see?
How dare I suggest that stakeholders communicate with each other?
No way.
What a naive fool I am. But,
no, you're absolutely spot on. I think there's no way there's going to be purpose-built stadiums in Singapore. It's not going to happen because of space, because of funding, because of the priorities of where football lies. So if sharing is the option, then communication has to happen. My point is, how can you do this? You want to claim it's the Singapore Premier League, but clubs don't have a certain place to go back to. It's not just about home stadiums for fans. It's about players as well. You look at the European examples. I know I'm stretching it by comparing it to Europe, but stadiums are home grounds. There's banners, there's some culture,
Offices,
there's certain
shops,
stands. Exactly.
J-League. You don't even have to go to J-League, K-League.
I mean, I agree completely with Lingesh in a sense where it needs to be multi-purpose because that's the Singaporean lifestyle, right? For example, I go out to a game with my family. Maybe I drop my wife and the kids off to go shopping while I go watch football. So multi-purpose makes sense. But I agree with you. It needs to be some form of communication where you cannot be ruining the pitch for the rest of the teams. There needs to be gatekeeping. It needs to be policed better, because right now it looks like a bit of a very amateur hour production when you're shifting games from Jalan Besar to our Tampines Hub at your whim.
And one thing that's lost amid all this debacle, the Tampines Hub debacle, is the reply from the PA's association when they say, "How long have you returfed the pitch yet?" He said, "For the 6 years that our Tampines Hub has been in operation, 6 years hasn't been returfed
Worrying,
yet."
right? Yeah.
It's worrying because here you are going to insert so many community events, and you have two Singapore Premier League clubs using the pitch weekly for training and matches, and you are using a standard which is maybe for 10 years ago on a stadium which is rarely being used for other things other than football for a single club.
Unbelievable.
And I know that's the one thing that caught my eye. This 6 years not returf standard has got to change.
The
You got to change
AstroTurf, yeah.
at least 2 years, 3 years.
The AstroTurf on my balcony has been returfed more recently. It's about the size of this desk. I mean, yeah, that one I agree with. But you make a great point. Honestly, it slipped my mind. There's no reason why these stadiums, while they are still being shared, can't have an identity to the clubs who are using them. That is a great, great point. I can't stress it enough. The J-League does it. But a more relevant example would be these boys here. West Ham United do not own their stadium. They rent it. And part of the agreement, because they rented it from the Olympics, right? It was the old Olympic Stadium. Part of their agreement with the London Stadium is they are allowed to decorate it, right? Throughout the season.
Yeah.
So during the EPL season, it looks like West Ham Stadium.
Okay.
Then post-season, they use it for track and field and things like that. A lot of the West Ham stuff is taken down. Yours is a great point. There is no reason why our Tampines Hub can't look like Tampines' home stadium, despite the fact it's used for other things. Now, I know it's complicated currently because it's being shared.
Yeah.
But in an ideal world, you've got half a dozen stadiums for half a dozen clubs. They should look like and feel like the home stadium of that club from the moment you work through the turnstile.
Exactly, and clearly the our Tampines Hub model works because they're doing something similar at Toa Payoh eventually, right?
And Pongo, I think, will
exactly.
eventually.
So we need to work towards that, and it's shocking that for 6 years you're not relaying. I'm not even getting into the argument of artificial pitches and natural grass, right? That's a discussion for another day. We're just talking about giving these players a simple standard to train on and play on. I don't think that's too much to ask for. So hopefully something will be done in terms of playing surface before we even talk about stadiums and venues.
Yeah, which brings us nicely to the next comment, which is Meow King Meow. Great name.
Great name.
Meow. Who says, can the football clubs own their stadiums, i.e. no public stadiums? Anything public should be shared, which we all agree on. Well, the first point, I think we kind of answered, it's just not feasible in Singapore.
Yeah, maybe a 20, 30 years down the line, you might see some things happening.
I mean, it's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. And when you look at the number of SPL games we have, can you really justify, even if I was a brand new owner buying a club, the stadium is not my priority because you're not going to make a hell of a lot of money from merchandise, for example. Yeah. And it's a lot of investment for a short amount of games.
And to their credit, Lion City Sailors have built their own training center, and that's the first step. I think.
There's just the model. I think there has to be the model going forward. And to your point, Meow King Meow, you need to elbow your friends and family because you guys watching, you're great. You would assume that if you're watching and listening, we're kind of on side with local football. Yeah. But how can we possibly justify private stadiums when we can't fill or even get close to filling
our public
the
stadiums.
shared public stadiums that we have now? Yeah. We have no argument here. If we were getting 5,000 and they were crammed to the rafters every week and 2,000 were locked out every game, then we have an argument. But for the average taxpayer indifferent to football, they look at our tenancies and go, hey, Kayla, I want it for swimming. I want it for track and field. I want it for frisbee.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've brought up Lion City Sailors as the benchmark, right? In terms of building their own training ground. Even they have got shifted from Jalan Besar to Bishan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Bishan last season is their designated home ground, but the pitch wasn't good enough because of the then Mitsubishi Electric Cup or Suzuki Cup, whatever you want to call it. So it's a real debacle that these teams cannot have to shift from home to home. You know what I mean? So I think it's really a pipe dream in terms of having a stadium. We could work towards it, hopefully, but if the money was available, I think it would be invested elsewhere in the local game rather than in a stadium to start with.
Or in Liverpool. But
Possibly.
Not anymore. But honestly, yeah, I agree with that. Beggars can't be choosers. We can't ask for stadiums and then not fill them. We've got to fill them first.
Yeah.
But let us know what you think. Now, moving on to the debate that never ends.
So yeah, this is a major debate. And it's good that a lot of readers have also joined in this debate.
Yes.
So we got So Yong as a guest a couple of weeks ago.
The SEA Games long distance runner who is taking part as we speak, and we wish him well at the SEA Games.
So we talked about, how it's difficult to raise the standards of local football if we don't tap into the base of the Chinese community, which is a majority in Singapore. So Yong brought up that point, and he also brought the point that, on the FIFA rankings, only Singapore is like the only country which the majority race is not
seldom or not at all represented in the first 11, which I've been saying for 20 years. It's not a controversial point.
It's a point which both of us agree, and then we put it out. We put out our TikTok videos, we put out on Facebook, and it just exploded.
500,000 plus.
Yeah,
as you should, because he makes valid point, right? Why is it that one statement he made about Singapore being the only FIFA country that probably isn't represented by its majority is startling.
So that's startling, and it's also somehow some people have got the wrong idea, thinking that So Yong and in turn us wants a quota in the national team, 75% quota. In accordance to the races, and then they were saying, "Oh, if you are good enough, you must be in the national team."
Yeah.
So and that's while their thoughts are spot on. You say So Yong and neither they us ever said that we need a quota, 75% quota on the national team. In fact, if let's say we tap into the 75% Chinese majority base, and the national team that comes out is still predominantly Malay.
Yeah.
That is a good thing because it means the Malay players or the Indian players who are in that team, who are dominate that team, are the best among the whole community.
Which actually plays to their point. If you're good enough, you get in.
Exactly.
That's it. It's got nothing to do with quotas.
Right, but the thing is, right now, we don't tap into the Chinese base, so we don't know whether they are the best of the best or not, because there might be a big pile of them you have not tapped into.
Keong, look, you make this comment that some people in the comments suggest you guys want a quota and stuff like that.
We never said it once, but
unpopular opinion. But I think that actually internally, I'm not privy to anything, I'm just saying it, I think there have been discussions where there needs to be a quota. Look at the recent national team. Let's be honest here. Look at the recent national team. Lionel Tan, Joshua Pereira. There is a bigger push for Hawaii Lun. There is a bigger push for Chinese players, whether this is political, whether this is merit-based, open to interpretation. But it is being addressed in a sense where I think with the whole Unleash the Raw project, I do think I'm not taking doing any disservice to any of these players I've mentioned. They are there based on merit. Lionel Tan obviously plays for the Lion City Sailors, scored 2 goals on his national team debut. They are there somewhat on merit, but I think they also serve a bigger purpose in line with Unleash the Raw. There is a political agenda or motivation here, in my opinion.
And it's not new, because I think Gabriel Craig, to extend Gabriel Craig, Goh Tat Chuan, or Stephen Tan before, also act like a proxy that say, hey, we got Chinese players.
Yeah, and I've complained about this for many years. They should not be the Chinese poster boy every time they play. They should just play.
And that's fair enough. I think they are talented enough to be merited their place in the squad. But the thing is that it doesn't address the major problem. Is that the big pile of Chinese talents are still untapped.
Yeah.
And you don't do anything to tap them into the thing, and it's always going to be the standards might stagnate and everything, because you're not seeing how good you could be.
Of course.
Yeah. Great comments. This is the problem I have with some of the responses to So Yong's comments, which were fair and balanced and statistically correct.
Yeah.
We are underrepresented by our majority race. Yeah. That's all he said, right? In fact, I double-checked. Our SEA Games squad of 20 has 4 Chinese, which is an improvement, which is great, and good for those boys. Good luck to them. It's an improvement. They are trying to make headway, but it's not enough. When you've only got 4 out of 20,
of course,
coming from 75% of your majority, it's got nothing to do with specific races. It's about pure mathematics. Here is 75% of our country's talent pool not being tapped. How can we tap into it and get more from it? That is all Ray Yong was saying. Okay, just to add to that, he briefly said dominant race when he meant to say majority race.
Yeah.
But of course, people jump onto that. They willfully willfully misrepresent or misinterpret what he was saying to try to make some cheap argument.
Yeah.
Of course.
When he wasn't saying that at all.
Yeah.
He meant dominant race in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
Chinese is the dominant race in terms of numbers. Don't look for things that are just not there. And all I would say is, last point, whenever we say the word race in Singapore, I just wish we could look at it in less simplistic, hysterical, binary terms. He's right, he's wrong, he's right, he's wrong, he's racist, he's not. We have 75% of our country not playing enough football, and we need to address it. That's all we ever said. We never said the word quota once. We never would say the word quota.
No, of course.
We need more Chinese playing football.
Yeah.
That's it.
And they give the argument that France, the national team, predominantly African players of African descent.
Dissent, yeah.
Yeah, and then they say, oh, why?
But not entirely.
Not entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that it's not, say, the France Football Association doesn't look at the predominant Caucasian race. It's that just simply because the African descent players
Are better.
Yes. And if the Malay
based on
players,
merit.
it's based on merit. If the Malay players are better than the Chinese, so be it.
But it's
In
a
the
lame
future.
argument. It's a cop-out argument because the majority race, the Caucasian European race, if you like, of France, still plays the game in huge numbers.
Exactly.
It's still the national sport. They're still represented at every single age group
Exactly.
level
Yeah.
in France,
So-
right the way through to the national team. It's a cop-out of
I
an
think
argument.
you're talking about the national team as well as the SEA Games squad. Let's also look at the SPL. In terms of the rosters for all 8-9 teams, however many teams there are, there is under-representation, which I like your point about mathematics. That just puts so much perspective into this.
it's just maths. Take
simple
emotion out of
maths.
it.
It's not a racially incited argument or anything
no.
like that. It's pure math in terms of numbers, which will then better your chances of having better players.
Yeah.
That's all we say. We're trying to take emotion out of it. And look
Good luck on social media.
Oh,
though.
and look
Again, expecting too much.
I got it as well.
Yeah,
It wasn't just radio. I got it as well. What does the Angmo know about blah, blah, blah? A bit
What
more
does
than
the
you.
fatty know about them? I heard that before. No,
Yeah,
it's
we
fine.
get it all the time.
We get it.
Yeah.
Comes with the territory.
Usually from people who wasn't born when I started writing about
Yep.
local football. But it's okay. We take
Yeah.
it. We're broad shoulders. We take it. All right, but let us know what you think. What are we going to do about the lack or not enough representation from our majority race in Singapore? Send all of your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, and Yahoo SCA on TikTok.
Right, let's get to the SEA Games. Young Lions, SEA Games. What did you think?
So Young Lions are now in Cambodia. All the best. You are in a very tough group, I understand.
Yeah, I think that almost takes the pressure off,
Yeah,
right? Being
yeah,
in a tough group because
yeah.
expectations are low.
Just there,
Anything
yeah.
will be a bonus.
Yeah.
But yeah, you shouldn't be too knee-jerk with the results. I know.
Yeah,
And
so-
at the time of recording, they lost their opening game.
Opening game 3-1 to Thailand, and if I watched the game, I thought, okay, the Young Lions ran the whole game. They huffed and puffed and tried all they could, but Thailand seemed to be playing at like second gear. It's like they'll just going through the motion. Once they get the 3-1 lead, like okay, we gotta prepare for our next game or something like that. So they weren't at their tip top form. That is for sure. And then that reminded me of a feature that came out on Straits Times a couple of roughly a week ago, which says that Thailand and Vietnam, these are the two powerhouses team in
They've won
Southeast
every
Asia.
SEA Games, right? Since 2013.
The SEA Game is already something like a irrelevance to them.
A done deal.
Yeah, they're looking at
Beyond.
tournaments which have Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Australia. These are the teams that they are aspiring to in order for their youngsters to qualify for the 2030 World Cup. That is long-term planning for them. They're already looking that way already. Now, Singapore just started with their Unleash the Raw projects. And it's also a long-term project. They're saying 2034, but I think it's got to carry on past 2034 World Cup. But the thing is that the more I look at it, the more I feel like, wow, we are already that far away.
Yeah.
And it's going to get even further and further away, even though we are doing our best.
Look, we are playing catch-up, right? We're absolutely playing catch-up against the likes of Thailand or Vietnam. And various different podcasts always urge for patience when it comes to Unleash the Raw, when it comes to all these projects. I think from a fan perspective, yes, you can ask for patience as long as there's tangible markers along the way. You look at Thailand, Vietnam, right now they're gunning for something much higher than Singapore. But along the way, there were tangible markers. They dominated the continental ASEAN competition. They
Suzuki
continued
Cup.
Suzuki Cup, SEA Games. You know what I mean? There were tangible markers to show progress was being made. Right now, you saying the boys are huffing and puffing over 90 minutes over Thailand, no surprise. But at least they're huffing and puffing because that's more than we've seen in recent years sometimes. So again, that's tangible markers. Eventually, I'm not saying overnight we're going to win tournaments, but at least respectable showing, second place finishes. Then we aim for, I think it's a long-term project, but there needs to be tangible markers because fans these days are fair weather. The way you want to accept it or not, all fans are fair weather. You need to give them something to hold on to. So Singapore, despite having this long-term project, they need tangible markers along the way. And I think that is the only way to start competing. Yes, it's worrying when you see how far Thailand and Vietnam are, but Thailand and Vietnam started somewhere. I grew up in an era where Singapore was better than these teams. And then we rested on our laurels and here we are. So eventually we can catch up with them. How long? I don't know. I might start graying by then, but we shall see. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
You already are. You already are. There's no need for that. But I agree with your point about tangible markers. However, this is the paradox for Singapore football and the mindset generally. We can't do things small here. We can't just say, we're going to win the SEA Games. That's our tangible marker. It's got to be qualify for the World Cup in 2034. We can't just have Asia's best airport. We have to have the number one airport. It's a very laudable kiasu mindset to have. But as you said, there's a massive contradiction here with Unleash the Raw. I said on previous podcasts, you should have tangible targets. You should. You shouldn't just drift. You should have targets. But we can't even get to the SEA Games level. But the Singapore mindset is World Cup. Shoot for the moon. Yeah, but can we win the SEA Games? For World Cup, shoot for the moon. Yeah, but we can't even get out of the group in the SEA Games.
World Cup, shoot for the moon.
And then, of course, it's a very lofty ideal, but then you set yourself up for such a fall.
Yeah.
But I get it. The SEA Games in itself is not exciting. It's not sexy enough. But however, the other nations, they're not looking at the sexy angle.
For the record, we haven't even won the SEA Games.
I know. But your nations that you mentioned, they're not talking about the sexiness. They're not talking about headlines and grandiose projects. It's we need to go this step, this step, this step, this step. Sexy or not, this is the only way forward. And that, to your point about the article, is what I agree with completely. We should have more sensible stepping stones in our process rather than our grandiose plans.
And more importantly, like you said, you cannot rest on your laurels anytime. That's the problem with Singapore in the early 2000s when we won some of the Suzuki Cup titles. We won 4 actually.
Yeah.
And then we thought that, okay.
And that was the moment.
Yeah.
That was the moment to rebuild.
We could have started this Unleash the Raw thing, but we rested on our laurels thinking that all those players could carry us towards something else.
Which I don't understand because Singapore in every other aspect never rests on its laurels.
Yeah.
For 1 year, for example, we get second best airport, no way. Next year, I'm coming back for number 1.
Man.
Yeah.
So in football, why is it a sense where we've not just regressed to number 2 or number 3, we've regressed...
Excellent point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, yes, this is the situation. Something needs to be addressed. The faster we do it, the faster we're on that track to achieving something. And the only way to do it is...
Because other countries like Thailand, Vietnam, they're not waiting for you, you know.
Yeah.
You're like, they're already pushing ahead for so far ahead of us. We cannot rest on our laurels exactly anything.
Those conversations shouldn't even be in comparison to Thailand, Vietnam. We need to look at, I think we should stop calling the countries like Cambodia or Laos minnows anymore. They're not minnows.
Yeah.
They
We are
call
the
us minnows.
We are the minnows. You know what I mean?
Minnows.
Let's have some reality to the situation. That will start then to help that conversation to compete at our peers, and then we can move on to bigger things.
I think we rested on our laurels because unlike Changi Airport, Singapore football doesn't make money. It's why Liverpool were not bought by Singapore. It doesn't make money. We want to see bottom lines, KPIs, and all the things that are very hard to quantify when it comes to sports and arts. We're still working on that mindset. But let us know what you think. What are we going to do? What should our realistic football goals be? Send all of your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
Do keep your comments coming. We do go through every one of them. Thank you. And thank you, Raushan. Brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me. Exciting stuff.
Oh,
Brilliant stuff. Good luck to the boys in the SEA Games. Good luck to everyone taking part in the SEA Games. And we'll see you right here next week. Take care.